And welcome to the Country Telegraph. It's a Friday. Who's been counting down the seconds? Forget the hours. It's a good week though, but very, very busy. Today, incredibly busy, but what a show we have coming up. But before that, looking at some of the headlines around Australia. Dairy farmers may struggle to break even and the milk pool is forecast to shrink next season as soaring fuel, fertiliser and water costs dominate the 2026-2027 outlook. Egg producers have warned they will defy the Allen government's new poultry warfare standard that comes into effect from July, requiring them to start removing hens from conventional cages as early as 2030. Another one of their poultry laws. A couple of the Upper Hunter region of New South Wales will face court facing 26 charges in relation to alleged farm fraud worth more than $300,000. And what else is happening? Farms groups fear rural communities could face higher cost if mobile spectrum licence prices rise as expected in an Australian Communications and Media Authority ruling expected within weeks. That's what we want. We want that service that almost works. You know, it doesn't really work, but it does sometimes anyway. Don't forget to subscribe to the Country Telegraph on YouTube. Make a call if your phone works. And also on Rumble too. You can subscribe to YouTube and Rumble and follow us on Facebook or X. Back again. Louise Martin lives on a sheep and cattle property outside Tambo in the outback Queensland. Louise is the federal president of the Isolated Children's Parents Association, which is ICPA Australia. Louise represents families from regional and remote communities across the country, advocating for equitable access to education regardless of geographic location. We're going to talk to Louise today about her organisation and the support it provides to isolated children and their parents, and perhaps better appreciate the trials and tribulations of life outside our cities. First of all, Louise, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Now, where the heck is Tambo?
The Tambo is 900 kilometres northwest of Brisbane on the road to Longreach on the National Highway.
Jeepers.
I'm 5 hours from the nearest traffic light and 5 hours from the nearest McDonald's out here.
5 hours from Macca's. How do you handle it? Sorry about that.
Quite easily, actually.
I can't be rude. I won't be rude. I'll stop it. It's Friday. I have to be happy. Happy Friday. Tell me about your organisation.
Well, the Isolated Children's Parents Association was started in 1971, so we're 55 years old this year. And it was started by a group of families who came together in Bourke in Western New South Wales. The hostel in Bourke closed, and suddenly the parents were thinking of all those people who lived out of town and their kids were coming to school in Bourke. Suddenly they had nowhere to go. So the organisation was formed fairly quickly because it had been a realisation for a long time that our rural and remote children were not getting an equitable access to education, and this was the catalyst, the straw that broke the camel's back, they say. And we rallied together as parents. So how are our children going to access education at all, let alone equitably? So it started from there. And our first and major big win was in 1973, a couple of years later, where the federal government acknowledged that our children were not being catered for, and they introduced an allowance which they call the Assistance for Isolated Children, and that helps families who have no access to face-to-face schooling to supplement the cost of accessing that education. So that's how we started in 1971.
Because I'm from the bush, sort of, nothing like Tambo, but and we used to complain that we felt left out because of of government decisions. Is the government doing enough for, say, the people in your region and for your organisation? And can they do more?
I would say no, they're not doing enough, and the gap continues to widen between the cost of education and the allowances we are receiving. We have been actually trying to meet with the Minister for Social Services for 10 years to try and get an increase with our assistance for isolated children, to no avail. And the margins continue to increase, and to the point that if you have no other choice to go to boarding school for secondary education, it's costing at least $20,000 per student per year on average, out of pocket expenses, and that adds up very quickly. And my children have finished secondary schooling now, fortunately, and that was a $500,000 experience. And that has just increased my farm debt rather than me actually having the capacity to pay cash for that. So it's that sort of thing. In accessing in-home care, which is a early childhood support, that's becoming more and more expensive, and the bureaucracy around it. I think the government is always trying to put a square peg into a round hole when it comes to rural and remote students, where it doesn't matter if you're early years or right through to tertiary. Whatever fits in the city is not working for us, and we find that very challenging, trying to get the message through that our needs are different, and we don't want more than anyone else has got. We just want a fair go, and currently that's not the case.
What about can you just tell me and explain, just so that people understand, the difference between living, say, in the outback or far deep rural Australia, compared to living in a large regional or a cap city? The difference that children and the disadvantages that they go through, and also the advantages, because there are advantages. I think in my own humble opinion, I think people in the bush do grow up to be a lot more realistic and level-headed, although there are exceptions. Just look at the person talking to you. But I mean, tell us the difference. Tell us your thoughts, and just explain, if you can, explain to those not familiar with the outback, what it's really like to live in the outback and why you need to have some sort of fair play.
Well, to be fair, it is an idyllic place for kids to grow up. The freedom, the space, the adventures you can have without is truly remarkable, and it is a wonderful place to grow up. When it comes to primary schooling, we have the most wonderful schools of distance education that really offer fabulous education for kids. But it's that social interaction. If you live 100 kilometres from your nearest neighbour, and that's over an hour, it takes a lot of effort to catch up with people. It can be, I'm over, it takes me half an hour to get to my town. If I was to send my children to a local high school, that's 200 kilometres away. It's the distance that is the key barrier, I think, from when it comes to access. We live a long way from each other. Social interactions can be minimal. And when it comes to secondary schooling and beyond for our young people, that's when it's critical. You have, we're a social animal, and humans need to interact. And our teenagers need to play sport, music, all that extracurricular stuff, rather than being stuck at home on their own without any other interaction with kids their own age. That's when it starts to get a bit tough. It doesn't matter so much when you're young and you can just play with your siblings if you're lucky to have a few. But when it comes to secondary, kids need their own peers of their own age, and that's always been challenging for us out here.
My brother went to boarding school, and I'll leave it at that. I think he lasted more than a day. But what does it do to a family? Because if you got and just from a mother's point of view or a father's point of view, You got your, and even though you're flat out like a lizard drinking, as they would say, um, you haven't got your family with you. Your children are 1,000 miles away, or 1,000 kilometres
Yeah.
away. What does it do to the children and then to yourselves and as a family collective?
It's really tough. It's a tough decision to make, to send your kids to boarding school, but you're basically handing over your child at the age of 11 for someone else to raise that child on your behalf. That's what the boarding people are doing. They're raising our children. And I tell you, I have twins, so it all happened at once for me. It was the longest drive home I've ever had when I dropped my kids at boarding school, and it still makes me a little bit emotional now. And that's over 10 years ago. It was a long trip home, and we so look forward to having the kids home on holidays and whatnot. But in reality, your child leaves home at the age of 11 or 12, and we put our faith within the team at the boarding houses to raise our kids during the term. It's really tough when they're sick or homesick. You're only at the end of a phone. That's when it's hard, when they get crook at school, and you just can't turn up. It's like a whole day before you can get there, and the cost of it all. And one of my kids had chicken pox, and it was during COVID, or sort of not during COVID, but sort of around then. And I couldn't get to there. She had to live under the house at my sister's house. Fortunately, she had somewhere to go, and I wasn't able to get there for over a week. And, she was really ill. And so that's...
We seem to have had a slight hiccup there. We have the stills. It's like, and then we'll have the internet connecting. Maybe in a second. Louise Martin there from ICPA. We're just going to wait and just fill in a bit of time. Hopefully Louise can come back to us. Although Louise has just disappeared, so I'm sure if we just wait and just hum songs, sing songs, maybe Louise will come back. But if not, it's a very tough life in the bush. I was talking to someone yesterday on air, and they said that, day before, sorry, and they said that anything that's an hour and a half away from a major town or a city, regional area, it's a long way. Then you are in the bush, and we need to have a lot of empathy for those in the bush, because they're doing a great job, not only for themselves and their family and doing the best they can, they're also looking after the country. And with all the garbage that goes on with, fuel crisis, and government needs to, as we would say in the bush, remove the digit and start, walking the talk, because at the moment there's not a whole lot of that. Now Louise, I think, is just about to come back in. Hopefully Cam has connected all the buttons. Louise, I was just saying how tough it is in the bush, and it is tough, but you disappeared.
Yes.
Who's your internet provider, by the way? Is it
Oh,
NBN?
don't get me started. I noted when at the
Sorry.
top of the show you mentioned our unreliable internet, and we just lived a moment of that, and that's unfortunately part of our reality out here too. And it's disappointing for your program, but
No, it's all right.
that can happen.
Yeah, my dad would say, "There you go again. When next you'll want food and air and clothes."
Oh dear.
So we're going to wrap it up fairly shortly. But what can the public do to help make it a bit easier? Because it is tough, and a lot of that's just within yourself. Government, they need to. When I was just saying, when you're off air, that we would say in the bush, they need to remove the digit. And start doing a lot more than they are. Because you are a long way, and if you're 90 minutes from any town or regional centre, you are a long way from anywhere, and then you're reliant on excellent government services, and that excellent and government services don't go hand in hand. What do you think is most needed at the moment to make life better and bring it up to you'll never get the fair play thing because you are out of sight, out of mind in many cases. However, you are a citizen of Australia, you are an Aussie, and you're doing a great job by feeding and looking after Australia. And so we need to do a lot more. So if you had a wish list, just say if one of your teeth fell out and you put it in the glass of water and the tooth fairy was Anthony Albanese, I'd leave the house actually and get an exercise. But if Anthony Albanese popped in as a tooth fairy, and he says, you have your wish. What would you like to have besides making me get out of your bedroom?
It seems tough to say, but we actually need money. We need money. As you say, we are feeding and clothing the nation out here. We are contributing significantly to the bottom line, to the GDP of this country. Per person, we outstrip pretty much everyone else. And we just want a fair go. We just want people to listen to us. We want to make it fair and equitable. We want to be able to get our kids to... Actually, on top of the wish list would probably be student fares on public transport to get kids to and from school, because that is just outrageous what the cost of that is. It just seems like every time we turn around, it's costing us money. And it does say in our constitution, but we should be... everyone's entitled to a free education. And at this moment in time, there's nothing free about educating any kid from early years right through to tertiary in this country. And we acknowledge we live a fair way away from town, and that's a choice we make. We're proud to live out here and happy to live out here. It's always going to cost us more money, but it shouldn't have to be to the detriment of families having to pack up and leave, and the population declining continues out here, and there's less and less people feeding and clothing the nation. Yeah.
Tell me, just for my own curiosity, my place I lived at was a place called Cardros, but we had it easy. We had one shop and a petrol station and a mechanic, but about 8 kilometres away was civilization. So I can't whinge at all. But what's your, because we used to have barbecues. We used to look forward to a barbie on usually Saturday night, because Friday night was watching the footy or winding down for the week. What do you do in Tambo on a weekend?
Look, anyone who said it was boring in the bush is
boring at all.
Under a log. We have a couple of pubs. We have a beautiful art gallery in our town. We have a tennis club, sports clubs, polo cross, and people make their own activities. And there's often, and this weekend coming up is the local show in our next town. Our community, volunteering in our community for all sorts of activities is really, really important. Mm-hmm. We have very active golf, gun clubs, and we make our own activities, and there's generally something on somewhere in the bush every weekend. Rodeos, camp drafts, all of those sort of things. Or you could just go to the pub for dinner on a Friday night if that's what you want to do. That's
what I want to do. I mean, pubs are, isn't it a pub? It's a great place for when families would go there, especially on a Saturday arvo or a Sunday arvo. Yeah. You throw on the TV, watch a bit of rugby or whatever the case is, bit of footy. But it's a very important part of a small community, isn't it? And just like a church is a very important part.
That's right.
Not just because you're trying to ask for favours in the next life. In my case, they run out. But it's an important part of life, and that's what makes a community great.
Yes.
And I fear that, there's always been the ignorance, hasn't there, about the bush, but I fear that it's becoming quite bad at the moment, worse than ever. And I know we're all got our own problems and stuff, but we need to start thinking about our neighbours, don't we? In your case, your neighbour's probably about 4,000 kilometres away, but we still need to think about them, wondering how to get there. Because it's you get one chance in this country, and we've got to make the most of it.
Absolutely. We really do.
Fantastic. Now, if somebody wants to find out more about your organisation or yourself, how do they do that?
We have a website, called the Isolated Children's Parents Association, and we have, I'm the president of the national body, but we have state-based organisations as well, and you join your local branch, and that's how we advocate for. It's a grassroots from our branches right through to federal. And the one great thing about ICPA is that you can have a problem at your local town in Tambo, and next week I'm going to Canberra to advocate on behalf of our members, and we will be seeing politicians. There's not many groups that can say that they've got a direct link to from grassroots right to Parliament House. So looking forward to going there next week and kicking some goals for rural and remote students.
I think it's fantastic. And by the way, I'm sorry, I did probably terrify you when I said the tooth fairy being Anthony Albanese. I mean,
well, I was wondering where that was going, but
But that's his other job. Anyway, we've got to stop that. We're not drinking or being stupid at all. Look, it's fantastic chatting to you, Louise. Louise Martin there, here on the Country Telegraph.
Thank you so much.
What's up, guys? So today we're going to talk about the most nutritious terrestrial plant in the world. Hold tight. Alright guys, so welcome to my health food store. This tree sitting here behind me was literally the catalyst that got me excited about edible landscaping back in 2010, 2011 when I was a standard landscaper, and I found out about this tree, which is Moringa. I started going nuts. I started going to local meetings. I learned about the tree. Before you know it, I was selling these trees on Craigslist, selling these trees, to local people in the paper. I probably sold about 2,000 of these trees before I did anything else in the edible industry. Let's check this thing out. So behind us is Moringa oleifera. This tree is native to India and grows like a weed here in Florida. This tree took 26 degrees or 24 degrees for 6 hours 2 years ago. It came back from the roots. It thrives in our crappy sandy soils. It kind of thrives on neglect. So typically speaking, when we cut back our entire market garden, when we did our chop and drop here a couple of weeks ago, this got completely whacked down to a couple of feet. Commercially, they grow these trees, a foot or two apart and just let them get a couple of feet tall. And they're constantly harvesting this new growth. And you could see here, this is where I cut the tree back. This is all that new fresh growth. And I prefer the leaves actually dried and powdered. I like it really as a supplement, but this can be eaten fresh. And this tree's also been called the horseradish tree. It has a little bit of a spice to it. So you can eat the fresh leaves like this. You can eat the dried leaves. You can cook and eat the pods. You can eat the flowers. You can use the roots. One of my favorite places here in Florida is Echo, and Echo's doing a lot of work with this tree. They're bringing this into third world countries. They're literally fixing malnutrition. So, I look at this as having like a health food store in my backyard. This tree is, has 25 times more iron than spinach, 10 times more vitamin A than carrots, 7 times more vitamin C than oranges, 2 times more protein than yogurt, 4 times more fiber than oats, 17 times more calcium than milk, 15 times more potassium than bananas. So, talk about a superfood here. And shout out to my buddy Kendrick with Numa Nursery. He's in the St. Pete area. He actually gave me the nutritional sheet for this one, because if you search Moringa, you're going to get like 10, 20 different sheets. That one definitely seems to be the most accurate. He actually sells oil from the seeds, powdered leaves, teas, all kinds of cool stuff. He has a Moringa tree growers co-op throughout the Tampa Bay area where he'll grow these trees in your yard. He'll prune them. He'll harvest the leaves. I think you even get a portion of it. So it's like a win-win. Check out Kendrick. I'll put a link in the description down below. But like I just started mentioning, this tree is a superfood. It grows like a weed. You can't kill it. Like I said, I'll cut this back. This is also biomass. So, in a agroforestry system, if you can't get to harvesting and drying the leaves, you can just chop and drop this. All this nutrition in these leaves is just going to go back to the plants in the soil. So, talk about an easy tree to grow. I can easily just cut back this whole head here. It's also a very soft wood, so it snaps. I would say when the tree gets a little bit on the bigger side, it actually tends to get a little bit ratty looking. So keeping the trees pruned and smaller is definitely the better way to having a more ornamental tree, especially if you're going to be planting this thing out in the front yard. But you know, I look at this as kind of like the new superfood. You guys probably heard of acai. Moringa is kind of the hot one today. The powder for this, you know, from this tree, when this first started becoming popular, was like 40 to 60 bucks a pound. I don't even know where it's at today. But we're talking about, you know, an expensive superfood too. So not only is this nutrient dense, I mean, you know, this is going to heal our bodies. This is amazing. Typically, I like to grow this some seed. You can grow this some cuttings. I noticed you don't get as strong as a tree long term. It seems like the trees grown from cuttings tend to blow over a little bit more. Echo even has their own variety called like the PK1, one that they've named and selected on their own. So Moringa, absolutely amazing. I highly suggest if you're in an area, even where you can't grow this, maybe growing this as an annual because it grows so quick. Like I said, this is just a couple of weeks of growth. So, you know, potentially if you're in a more northern climate, you know, getting this started in the greenhouse, you know, towards the end of your winter, getting it out, you could harvest off of it a couple of times, you know, just in that summer. If it dies back, it dies back. No big deal, right? So Moringa oleifera, literally having a health food store in your backyard.
So there you are, the world's most nutritious plant. Now wait till you hear this story. Stopped us in our tracks. Moringa is a highly nutritious, as you heard, versatile plant known as a superfood. Now that guy says the most nutritious plant in the world with edible leaves, pods, flowers and seeds. Often eaten in soups, salads, stir fries. Its leaves are rich in vitamins, minerals and protein. Now Moringa is primarily eaten in tropical and subtropical regions across South Asia, Africa and the Caribbean, where it is a native staple used for its nutritious leaves, pods and flowers. It's widely consumed in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, the Philippines, Indonesia and various African nations as a daily vegetable, and is gaining popularity as a superfood supplement in Western diets, except Australia and New Zealand. We'll find out more about that in a moment. It's just gobsmacked. Under Australian law, a consumable is either a food or a therapeutic medicine. There is no overlap, shock horror, between these two categories. Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, FSANZ, regulates the sale of food in Australia and determines what is allowed to be sold as a food. Now, recently, this organisation determined, shock horror, that Moringa can no longer be sold as a food in Australia. Now, this ban applies to all parts of the plant, including the leaf, which according to that guy is the most nutritious plant in the world. Not up there, it is the most nutritious plant in the world. But then why would they let us take it? Because it'll make us healthy. Makes sense. Just shows you that we have that ostrich syndrome. Let's put our head in the sand, put our bum in the air, and hopefully the magpies won't peck it. Now, the authorities justify the decision because there is no history of Moringa being used in Australia, only everywhere else in the world. And so it's considered novel and can only be sold as a TGA-listed medicine. What are you going to do, roll these leaves and smoke it? Maybe you could do that too. Now, this is despite the fact that Moringa is the equivalent of spinach on steroids for millions of people around the world, and that humans have been consuming this incredible leaf for at least 1,000 years. In fact, I would dare say, looking at Canberra, some of those are still alive. Our guests are Gary Duffy and Joel Malloy. Now, Gary grows plants on his farm for medicinal uses. In the 2022 floods, they lost around 3,500 Moringa trees, and he has just over 1,200 trees in their nursery ready to plant at the end of winter. Now, Joel Malloy is a grower and importer of Moringa and has been in this industry for 9.5 years. Joel has Moringa farms in India and Rosedale in Queensland. First of all, got a welcome to their laptops. I'd like to say cameras, but we can't because there are no cameras. Welcome to the program. We have your microphone turned off. You just need to turn that mic on if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thanks for having us here today.
Absolutely brilliant. And Joel, great to see you. You need your microphone turned on too. It's that button that says hit it with a hammer. Don't really hit it with a hammer. You'll be in trouble by the wife. We're not actually working. We still can't hear you at the moment. So Cam is floating around somewhere, and hopefully we can get Cam back to fix this up, because we don't have any sound at the moment. So I'll just keep talking to Gary at the moment. Gary, were you shocked with this decision?
We were gobsmacked because we've got a huge investment in in our place. We bought our property to grow Moringa. I'm 70 years old next year, and we wanted something that we could farm and have for the rest of our terms that we have here. And it was one of those plants that we had a look at. We did all our business study on it. Moringa industry before this decision in Australia was estimated to reach $90 million as an industry in Australia, and this decision has just knocked that on the head. Australia is the ideal place to grow Moringa. It's got similar soils in the western areas of Australia as India and Africa. It has many wonderful benefits, but Moringa was first cultivated in Australia in 1953 in Queensland. So to say that it's a novel food is even a misstatement, because in central Queensland they were cultivating it in 1953. In the 1980s, botanists noted that it's been cultivated for food in tropical and subtropical Australia, so it was in cultivation since the 1980s. In 2006, 2007, it was farmed in Bowen, and it produced 35 tonnes per hectare per year of Moringa seed pods, which were sent to the Melbourne markets, like the Victoria markets, and was sent to other markets down south, and for Asian communities. So Moringa pods were used in curries, they're used in all the different types of foods, Asian foods, Thai foods. I can go to my local Taiwanese food takeaway shop, and it has Moringa in it. It has Moringa in it. So the last known import of it that I'm aware of was a 13-tonne shipment, came straight directly from India into the Melbourne market. So that's goes to show that there is a lot moving with it. But Moringa is a daily vegetable in most South Asian foods. So for DAF, or for them to say that it can no longer be a food, I thought, and I had a look at it, and it's there's a term called food racism, where if you invite people to a country, or you have people to a country, and then you take out one of their staple foods by a government making a decision that bans a staple food of a particular group of people, then that's regarded as food racism. And it's really what's happened here is that a food that has been a staple diet for not 1,000 years, but been recorded for more than 5,000 years, and it's been eaten that well for 5,000 years. You know,
it's such a great product. I mean, it's so healthy for you. Joel, were you shocked when this happened? No, we still haven't got the microphone working. Cam was working furiously, so I'll go back to Gary at the moment. Gary, were you shocked when this happened?
Oh, absolutely. Like when the application was made to turn it into a food, to take it from a novel food to a mainstream food, it was done by Nusa Organica. They had 26 references to the food safety of Moringa in their 60-page application. They had food safety data from the US government food and safety, the UK government, the European Union food safety, the Indian government food safety, the Chinese government food safety, Asian and other scientific studies were all included in the application. So I really do not know how they said we don't have enough safety data, because all the data was there for them to have a look at. And so we've got to work out how they've got it so wrong.
What do you do? What do you do now? Because can you plant it for medicinal purposes? And I think that's just garbage, by the way. You are right. It is a very slanted decision, and I think it's probably ignorant and, as you mentioned, a racist decision. What do you do? I mean, because this is your livelihood, and we're not talking about something that's a horrible weed or something. You heard that guy beforehand, and you know this yourself. And this guy says it's the most nutritious plant in the world.
Well, it is. They use it in Africa to combat starvation in children. And I'll give you an idea. Is that Moringa is estimated to have a global net worth by 2032 of $15 billion in 2030, 2034. So we're effectively locked out of this. So Australia has locked itself out. It would be a fantastic economic boost for regions in Australia. You can't discount $15 billion industry just by some bureaucrats saying we don't have enough safety data. And you have a look at what the economic benefit to Australia is phenomenal.
Yep. Joel, it should be, I believe your mic is working now, it should be something that's backed by the government, because it's a superfood, isn't it?
Yeah, this is something that the government should be backing us in. As Gary said before, there's a huge opportunity here for the agriculture sector of Australia for an emerging industry. His numbers are quite accurate for the predictions ahead. We haven't even touched an export market yet, and we're barely scratching the surface on the Australian demand.
Yeah, I find this just appalling. Can I ask you, Joel, what do you do with yourself now? This is obviously you're too much for medicinal purposes, but I mean that's a very broad brush statement anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Look, I'm pivoting to other areas of Moringa. So the cosmetical side, the oils, and a few other things are still very legal. Look, as long as you don't put it in your mouth, you're generally okay at the moment.
But the idea is to put it in your mouth because it's a very, very healthy food.
Yeah, mate, look, it's shocking, this ruling. This is my 10th year in business. I mean, I've had customers for that long that have been buying it. It's just appalling what's actually happened here.
Can you, Gary? Can you appeal this? Can you? I mean, how do you? I mean, if you're in the bush, box in the ears, normally fixing that up, then you buy them a beer later, providing they don't win the fight. How do you appeal this? How do we get some sense through to the bureaucrats in the cap cities who've got no idea?
Well, we've started to form an association, for Moringa Association, called the Asia Pacific Moringa Association. We don't want to go into that bad area where you might remember years ago tea tree oil. All these tea tree oils farms started up, and then it all fell over because they came into the market too strong, too many, and the market couldn't handle it. So we want to form an association, and that'll give us a voice, to a collective voice to present to the ministers and to the government, and we hope to do that. Our first step, though, is that we've got a Queensland government petition up. It came live a day and a half ago. We've got 260 signatures on it in a day and a half, and we'd love everyone to go along and get this petition. The petition is mainly to get it back to where it was before they stopped it being as a food, so it can be a novel food again, or to bring it back to the food status. But we need, we have a Australia-wide petition pending approval, and hopefully that will give us the steps we need to go into the government to say, look, we're here, we want you to listen to what we have, look at the numbers, look at the figures, look at the boost that we can give to regional Australia. Like your previous guest was saying about how regional Australia is being left out of opportunities and things like this. Like we can't keep being a country where we grow hay and sell hay to ourselves. And that's basically what we are. We're basically growing crops and selling it to ourselves. We need to have that trade, international trade, and we need to be part of the international markets. And that's why Australian beef is so vibrant, and Australian lamb is so good, is because we sell internationally. If we just stuck in our own little planet, we end up like planet Pluto, you know, way out in the outer atmosphere somewhere and circling around by ourselves. We have to be a part of the global industries that, as they come up, and we have to be really in there. You take Moringa honey, which is, it retails between $36 and $90 for 450 grams.
Really?
Right. So, and cold pressed Moringa oil is $100 to $250 per litre. Like,
wow,
I think the oil companies would like to get that sort of money, but we can really get into the international market, and Joel's been doing it for 10 years. He has a greater knowledge of the market than I will.
Joel, when does it get better? Because we're dealing with bureaucrats here. They're worse than politicians, and they don't really care. When they do the job Monday to Friday, have 6 to 8 weeks off a year, get paid a lot of money, and they make bad decisions. This is a bad decision. If it was, I could understand if it was an obnoxious weed or something, or people were smoking and hanging from trees and that sort of stuff, but they're not. It is the most nutritious plant in the world.
Yeah.
So, how long? I mean, let's do two things. You're hoping for it to expedite the decision to make sure you can start getting back to normal, but in reality, is this going to be months, years before they show some common sense? And surely then we need to classify things differently, because if it's being done around the world, we have to do it too.
Yeah, mate. Like, I guess, when was the last time the government actually showed common sense for a start?
Not a long time ago.
But I mean, just to ban it on the basis of a lack of evidence is terrible. I mean, we're looking at probably, I think, around 3 people in FSANZ that have made this call, and it's affecting millions. Now, they've also gone off the back of an evaluation of, I think, 1 to 5 million is what they were told from the year to the year 2030. It's been grossly misrepresented. It's a much higher industry than that, and it's just to export it out here would be, out of Australia, would be an incredible boost. I mean, look, where I am, I'm up in like the Gladstone, Bundaberg region. A lot of stuff here won't grow in summer because it's just too hot. But Moringa is something that will. I mean, this is something we can diversify. The farmers in this area can absolutely grow it through the summer months, and we can export it to the world on top of what they're already growing now.
Can you smoke it?
Honestly, that's one thing I can't answer because I don't know.
I'm not at all interested, but I mean, it does everything else. I mean, maybe, look, here's the thing. You talked about Pluto before, Gary. Maybe Canberra could smoke it and they could start, well, they do anyway. Some say they do circle faraway planets such as Uranus. Anyway, that's another story. And I'm being very flippant, but it's a great product. I'm absolutely shocked.
Well,
Gary and Joel, if somebody wants to, because we are actually running out of time. And I can talk, by the way. I can talk more than you can, Gary, I reckon. If somebody wants to find out more about the plant and yourselves, how do they do that? First of all, Gary.
well, first of all, look up. We're setting up a website. We're doing a lot of things, but if you Joel, if you want to come through Joel through his site and connect to us at the moment. When we lost all our trees, we sort of hibernated for a little bit, and then we had to get back on our feet and re-establish ourselves. So that's been of great cost. But it's one of those things. But if you go to the e-petitions website, you can get on the Queensland government e-petition. It's not one of these dodgy change petitions. This is a proper one that the minister has to respond to. It will be presented in Parliament, and the minister will have to respond. So if you go there and get on through there, or go through Joel's Moringa site, we will be setting up the Moringa Association site soon. We've already got the domain name. We're going through the ABN and the registration and the red tape to set up an association with the ACNC and you name it. It is a long process, but you might not be able to smoke it, but I can tell you one thing. If you grow it out west, it grows phenomenally in dry soil. It doesn't like water. It is the best product to feed stock.
Wow, I mean, they might be like
so in India and Africa, they use it to feed cattle, horses, sheep, goats, and whatever. And it keeps growing.
It's amazing.
And if it runs out of water, it has like a boab bulb underneath the ground, and that bulb holds all the water. It can be a dead stick on the ground for 12 months, and first shower rain, it's got shoots back up again.
Yeah.
Joel, sorry, Gary, we have to go home midnight. I said I could out-talk you. I think we're about evens at the moment. Just imagine you and I, Gary, having a beer. We'd be the last to leave, I think, which is a good idea. Joel, just quickly, if you wouldn't mind just telling me if somebody wants to find out more about Joel Malloy.
Yeah, look, by all means, you can message me. info@moringaproducts.com.au is the best way. I respond personally. If you want to know more about it, please do that. Otherwise, this e-petition is our best shot. So the more numbers we get on this, the more we can just push it, really.
Yeah, I think so. But I can't believe the government's done this, because it's such a superfood. Gary Duffy and Joel Malloy, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the conversation. Coming up next, we're going to talk about something that really makes me feel happy.
There's something about this part of the world, the way the day begins slowly, rolling in off the coast, through the trees and into Timboon. This town has always had a strong connection to making things, from the days of hidden bush stills and illicit whiskey, to a railway line that once ran through its heart, both now gone, but the story continues here at the Timboon Railway Shed Distillery. We keep things honest. It starts with quality malted barley and harvested rainwater. From there, it's all done by hand. Hard work and a commitment to doing things the old way. Working with our cooper, each barrel is prepared by hand, shaped, charred and finished with intent. By crafting every cask ourselves, we guide the spirit from the very beginning. In the early hours, our copper stills are brought to life, worked by hand, ran with care. It's where the raw spirit begins to take shape. Over time, in cask, the whisky takes on its character, slowly building depth, warmth and complexity. There's no shortcuts here, just patience. When it's ready, it's brought back to the shed. Each bottle is filled and labelled by hand by our family, with the same care that's gone into every step for it. I'm proud of what we make here and the work that goes into every bottle, working with my family and a team that feels like family. But more than anything, it's seeing people come together and connect over it. Hearing how other families share a dram of Timboon whisky, there's nothing better than that.
There you are. What a my favourite subject. Thank you, Jen, for that. A couple of tipples at night, or not every night, but it does makes the woes of the world disappear. I'm not too sure about those that make it though. At Timboon Railway Shed Distillery in Victoria, they make a true single malt whisky using malted barley processed on the site. Now, the product is inspired by the great single malts of Scotland and the Isles, using their time-honoured traditions. Make it and then drink it. They have been producing small batch Aussie craft whisky on site since 2007, building a reputation for rich, charactered spirits. I like those sort of things, spirits. Our guest is Charlie Johnson, the brand ambassador for Timboon Railway Shed Distillery. Charlie has a great job managing wholesale inquiries, hosting distillery tours, plenty of sippings, and leading the tastings also. Known as a spirit guru, he conducts immersive experiences that include the distilling process and regional lunches. Charlie Johnson, already you're a god in my eyes. Hang on.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm not a religious man, but I've been known to commune with various spirits.
Was that after a few tastings?
Absolutely. No, I've been hard at work this morning, done a few of those with the head distiller, Josh. We're on the hunt for our next Governor's Reserve.
Tell us how long it takes to make a whisky.
It's a little bit of a case of how long is a piece of string. So legally, by Australian standards, your spirit only has to spend 2 years in a wooden barrel. If you're making Scotch whisky, it must be aged in Scotland, and they only have the legal stipulation of 3 years in a barrel. But of course, they've been doing a lot longer with a lot more patience than we have in Australia, so they've got a lot older whisky.
What made you get into this sort of business? Because we have a friend of ours who has been just dancing around the edges, thinking about doing it and whatever. And she always says that, Sandy always says that it just takes a long time and it's not a cheap experience. It's very expensive.
Well, that's right. It's not a cheap experience. So that's why most craft distillers who are small and starting up will actually start with a clear spirit like a vodka or a gin, because it doesn't have an aging component as such. You're able to create your product, establish your brand, and get some turnover, while your main game, your whiskey or your barrel-aged rum or what have you, is aging in the cask.
Tell me about the Timboon Railway Shed. How did this all come about? Was it because he had a few drinks and he thought, what a good idea, or he wanted to impact pain on himself for a little while? How did it all start? And tell us about Timboon, because I am familiar with Timboon, but there are many who aren't.
Yeah, so Timboon does actually have an illicit distilling history. So back in the 1800s, Timboon was a timber town, and during that time we had a bootload of Irish settlers coming to the area looking for work, and of course a handful of them knew how to make whisky from the homeland. So one such gentleman was called Tom Delaney, and old Whiskey Tom was very good at what he did, but not so good at paying his taxes. So the governor sends a undercover agent to bust up the operation. Long story short, there was a shootout, Whiskey Tom surrendered, and one of the barrels disappeared from the back of the courthouse, and Tom got away with a very light prison sentence. As a result, there's plenty of Delaney's still in town today, and they have quite an influence on the town and the whisky that's produced. So that's the long history. The short history is someone read that story, Tim Marwood, famous for his Timboon fine ice cream, and decided to build on that story and reignite the still and build from there. So that was in 2007 that he started distilling. We had our very first single malt whiskey produced in Timboon out of barrel by 2010, 3 years later. And another 4 years since then, Tim Marwood sold the business to another Timboon local, Josh Walker, our current owner and distiller, and he's taken it from strength to strength from there.
What about, tell us about your whiskies. Do you just have one, or are there varieties, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a core 4 single malt whiskies that we have all year round. So they're mostly aged in ex-fortified barrels. So depending on what kind of barrel you age your whiskey in, that does about 75% of the hard work for you. So we like to source our barrels from Australian wineries where we can find them, focusing on either tawnies or sherries, because we like that little bit of sweet influence. After we buy those off the wineries, they come to our on-site cooperage. So for those of you who don't know, a cooper or a cooperage is the man and the place where barrels get made. So they come here to us, where Josh's father-in-law Heath, he's our cooper. He shaves and toasts all of the lovely barrels there before we fill them with our own spirit and leave them to sit. And from there we have the 4 different whiskies.
Incredible. And if I think you also have food and that sort of stuff at the distillery. Tell us about what sort of offerings you have, and how someone can make, I was going to say make a weekend of it, but you want them to go home at night. So let's just say an afternoon. How do they do that?
Well, there's a fantastic 12 Apostles artisan trail that you can come on as well. So Timboon is in the southwest of Victoria, so just inland from the 12 Apostles and the Great Ocean Road, down in that fantastic dairy producing region near Warrnambool. Mm-hmm. So at the restaurant itself, we use a lot of the fresh local ingredients from around the area to craft fantastic little nibbly bits, arancinis, big gourmet toasties with our own house-grown beef and that kind of stuff. But there's also the Schultz Organic Creamery, there's the Timboon Fine Ice Cream, there's fudge, there's chocolate, there's everything in this neck of the woods for a bad time.
Fantastic. Any events happening with the distillery?
Yeah, absolutely. So while we don't have a whole heap that's happening in Timboon as such, over the next little while, we try to get out and about to different regional centres for some spirit-focused events. There's one coming up in the middle of June on the 19th and 20th up on the Murray River in Corowa. So that event will be called Whiskey on the Murray. And the guys up at Corowa there, they have their own whiskey distillery as well, and they invite a bunch of distilleries from New South Wales, from Canberra, from Victoria to convene on the Murray to showcase our wares. So we'll be attending that one. Down near Port Arlington later in October will be the Whiskey on the Bay, a sister event there, similar story but all Victorian distillers. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be a handful of international and Australian distillers convening at the Abbotsford Convent in Melbourne, in Collingwood there for the Whiskey Abbey. Yes, and that'll be later in November.
I'm sure a few of the spirits from the 1800s will be there, dressed with their long white garbs, and the nuns, I'm sure they used to, I knew a nun that used to love a tipple.
Absolutely. There's got to be a vice somewhere.
There has to be indeed. Good God. Charlie, if somebody wants to find out more about the distillery, how do they do that?
Fastest thing to do is jump on the Google machine and look up Timboon Distillery. We'd run tours. You can see our cooperage. We can walk you through the stills, the history of the place, as well as all the extra information around those fantastic other 12 Apostles artisans. You've made my the next hour and a half quite miserable for me because I have to wait to go home for a whiskey. But I think it's one of God's great gifts to mankind. And it's I spoke to my doctor the other day. I said, which is better for you, whiskey or a wine? He said wine. Anyway, we tended to disagree because I think whiskey's a very clean alcohol, and it's absolutely magnificent. And it's amazing the lies you can tell after a couple of glasses. I think the key there is volume. Are you drinking a bottle of wine or a couple of nips of whiskey? Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. You're my doctor from now on. Charlie Johnson, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph. Thanks for your company. A bit over time today, but all good. Some great topics. We won't do the weather at the moment because haven't got time. Got another show coming up. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Be kind to yourself and be kind to your neighbour.